My name is Jake, and up until a few years ago, I was the founder and face of a small YouTube channel called Appalachian Anomalies. It sounds more official than it was. In reality, it was just me and my two best friends, Sam, our main cameraman with an eye for atmosphere, and Cody, our tech guru and the most grounded, no-nonsense skeptic I've ever met. We drove all over the spine of the Appalachians, from forgotten coal mines in Pennsylvania to abandoned asylums in Kentucky, chasing local legends, ghost stories, and maybe, if we were lucky, something genuinely unexplainable. The job, if I'm being honest, was mostly just hiking and trespassing. 99% of the time, we'd find nothing but collapsed floorboards, beer cans, and peeling lead paint. But that other 1%? Man, that 1% was the fuel that kept the truck running. It was the electric thrill of stepping into a place that time had left behind. The thick, heavy silence that felt like a physical presence. This story is about that 1%. It happened in the late fall of 2019, deep in the mountains of West Virginia, and it's the reason Appalachian Anomalies is no longer online. It's also the reason that, to this day, I can't be in a quiet room without feeling my pulse start to race. It all kicked off when Cody, during one of his late-night deep dives on decommissioned military sites, stumbled across a series of cryptic posts on an old Cold War enthusiast forum. They talked about a location nicknamed Echo Station 7. It was supposedly a top-secret continuity of government communications bunker, buried deep in the Allegheny Mountains. According to the scattered rumors, the station was flash decommissioned in the late 70s after a vaguely described containment failure. Most entrances were dynamited and buried, but the station's greatest legend was a chamber at its core, a place the engineers had supposedly nicknamed the Whispering Room. The story went that the room's parabolic design was so acoustically perfect that it could amplify the faintest sound into a deafening roar. A pin drop was said to sound like a rifle crack. A whisper could become a blood-curdling scream. For a crew of paranormal investigators, it was the ultimate prize. A natural amplifier that could, theoretically, pick up sounds from beyond our normal perception. After weeks of poring over declassified survey maps and satellite photos, we found what looked like a possible way in, a concrete ventilation block, almost completely consumed by kudzu and rhododendron. This trip felt different, more serious. We packed climbing gear, tactical flashlights with a ludicrous number of spare batteries, walkie-talkies, MREs and water for 48 hours. And of course, Sam's entire Pelican case of high-end camera and audio equipment. The morning we drove out to the edge of the state forest. The air was sharp and clean with the smell of pine and wet leaves. The sun was low, cutting through the morning mist that always clings to the hollows out there. It was beautiful, almost painfully peaceful. I remember we were listening to Creedence Clearwater Revival on the truck's stereo, singing along badly to Bad Moon Rising. Looking back, the perfect, mundane normalcy of that morning feels like the setup to a cruel punchline. Finding the ventilation block was a challenge. It was a brutalist square of stained, gray concrete, an ugly scar in a sea of green. A rusted iron ladder was bolted to its side, leading straight down into a pit of absolute black. Cody, our safety guy, tested the ladder's mounts, gave a reluctant nod, and I went down first. The second my boots hit the damp concrete below, the world changed, the temperature plunged, and that unique smell of deep, forgotten places filled my lungs. The scent of cold stone, ozone, and a profound, undisturbed stillness. The light from the opening above was a pale square that did little to fight back the darkness. The rest of the tunnel was an inky, impenetrable void. All good, Jake? Sam's voice echoed from above, sounding thin. Yeah, clear. Come on down, I shouted back, and my voice felt small, swallowed by the immense space. Once we were all on the tunnel floor, we clicked on our flashlights. 3 powerful beams cut through the gloom, revealing a long, straight passage. The concrete walls were slick with moisture, stenciled with faded military designations, Sector 4B, and Access Tunnel, East. The silence was the most staggering thing. It wasn't just quiet, it was a heavy, oppressive silence that felt like it was pressing in on you from all sides. We started moving deeper, The only sounds were the crunch of grit under our boots and our own breath, which plumed in the cold air. Our flashlight beams jitterbugged across the walls, casting our shadows as lanky, distorted giants that danced and leapt with our every move. Sam filmed as he walked, his lens capturing the decay. Cody had his EMF meter out, sweeping it back and forth more out of habit than expectation. We'd been walking for maybe half an hour when we got the first sign that something was wrong. It was a tiny sound, almost nothing, a faint, metallic ping, as if someone had flicked a pebble against a steel beam far down the tunnel. "Hold up, hear that?" Sam whispered, lowering his camera. We stopped, holding our breath. The thick, dead silence flooded back in. "Just the place settling," Cody said, his voice a bastion of calm logic. "Temperature shifts make the metal contract. Or it's a rockfall in one of the sealed-off shafts. Could be anything." I wanted to believe him. I made myself believe him. In places like this, your own mind is the first thing to turn on you. We pushed on. But the seed was planted. I started noticing things I hadn't before. The puddles on the floor were still, with no visible drips from the ceiling above. Patches of pale moss on the walls looked unnervingly healthy, as if they were being nourished by something other than sunlight. And then I got that feeling. The one you can't explain. The primal, animal instinct on the back of your neck that screams you're being watched. I spun around, sweeping my light down the corridor behind us. Nothing. Just the empty tunnel stretching back into blackness. "What is it?" Cody asked, his light fixed on me. "Nothing. Just spooking myself." I lied. We came to a T-junction. According to Cody's map, the right fork would lead us toward the central command in the whispering room. This new tunnel was narrower, and the floor sloped distinctly downward. The air grew colder, and the smell of damp earth and rust intensified. We walked for another 20 minutes. The unspoken tension stretching thin between us. Cody was still trying to project an aura of calm, but I saw his head snapping around at the slightest sound. Sam had gone completely quiet, communicating only through hand signals, his entire world compressed into his camera's viewfinder. And then it happened. It began as a low vibration in the soles of my boots. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but it grew stronger, quickly building into a deep, grinding, terrifying roar. It wasn't the sound of any machine or animal. It was the sound of the mountain itself, groaning in protest, and it was coming from behind us, from the direction of our only exit. "What the hell was that?" Sam yelled. "Cave in. Move," Cody shouted, and for the first time since I'd known him, I heard pure, undiluted panic in his voice. There was nowhere to go. We froze as the ground shuddered violently. Dust and chips of concrete rained from the ceiling. The deafening roar lasted for a solid 15 seconds and then just cut out, leaving a silence that was 1,000 times more horrifying. After a moment of stunned disbelief, we turned and ran, sprinting back the way we came. An icy, sick dread clawed at my insides. We rounded the corner at the junction and pulled up short, our boots skidding on the slick concrete. The tunnel was gone. Where there had been a straight, dark corridor, there was now a solid wall of dirt, shattered rock, and twisted rebar. Our only way out was buried under tons of rubble. The air was thick with dust, creating a choking fog in our flashlight beams. We were entombed. The silence that followed was a physical blow. No one spoke. The only sound was the ragged, desperate sound of us sucking in dusty air. All thoughts of the whispering room, of ghosts, of getting good footage for the channel, were gone. They were replaced by one single, stark, terrifying question. "How do we get out?" "The radios," I said, my voice cracking. "Cody, try the radios." Cody fumbled in his pack, his hands trembling. He switched his walkie-talkie on. "Mayday, Mayday. This is the Appalachian Anomalies crew. Is anyone out there? Does anyone copy? Over." A burst of static was his only reply. "Useless," he said, his voice flat and hollow. "We're buried. No signals getting through this." We sank to the floor. Our 3 lights trained on the collapse as if we could disintegrate it with our gaze. The brutal reality of it washed over us. We were sealed in a concrete coffin, hundreds of feet beneath a mountain. We had supplies for maybe 2 days. If we were smart, then what? Suffocation? Starvation? The slow, creeping madness of the dark? Panic, hot and sharp, began to rise in my throat. I could feel my heart hammering, a frantic prisoner against my ribs. I had to consciously force myself to breathe slowly, to fight off the hysteria. Okay, listen, I said, my voice shaking but firm. We stay calm. A facility this important would have had emergency exits, other ventilation shafts. We just have to find one. The mission has changed. We're not exploring anymore. We're getting out. We agreed to conserve batteries. We killed 2 of the lights, leaving only mine on its lowest setting. The darkness seemed to leap into the space, pressing in around our tiny, fragile island of light. We started walking again, away from the collapse, deeper into the station, chasing the insane hope that our tomb might have a back door. We walked in a tense silence. Every footstep, every cough, every breath seemed to echo forever. Time dissolved. We could have been walking for 1 hour or 5, there was no way to know. In the deep places of the earth, time doesn't exist. We stopped to rest and force down some food. The silence was so total it was ringing in my ears. I chewed on a dry protein bar that tasted of nothing. The quiet was a physical weight, a pressure. It felt like a heavy blanket being slowly lowered over my face, smothering me. And that's when we heard the sound. It started as a faint, distant tap. We'd yelled for help a few times, but only our own voices had come back to us. This was different. This was not our echo. Dude, shush, Sam whispered, his eyes wide in the gloom. We fell dead silent, straining our ears. There it was again, a faint, rhythmic noise. Tap, tap, tap. A short pause. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from ahead of us, from the darkness we were walking into. Rescue team, Sam gasped, his voice breaking with relief. They must have heard the collapse on a seismograph or something. They're drilling down to us. A wave of pure, unadulterated hope washed over me. It was the only thing that made sense. Hey, I screamed, using all the air in my lungs. We're in here. We're alive. We're down here. My shout echoed down the long tunnel, the sound bouncing and decaying until it was gone. The silence returned, and the tapping was gone. We waited, hearts pounding with giddy anticipation. A minute, 2, 5, nothing, just the profound, dead quiet. That's not right, Cody said, the logic engine in his brain already kicking back in. If they were drilling, they wouldn't just stop, they'd signal back. The hope in my chest curdled into a cold knot of dread. Why had it stopped? Was it a rescue team taking a break? Or was it something else? We decided we had to move toward it. It was our only hope. However strange, every 10 minutes, we'd stop and yell, and every time, only the lonely sound of our own voices answered. After another hour of this slow, tense march, we heard it again, closer now, much clearer. Tap, tap, tap. There was something deeply unsettling about it now. The rhythm was too perfect, too steady, and it no longer sounded like drilling. It sounded like someone was methodically striking a metal conduit pipe with a rock. We stopped. I held up a hand, and then made a motion to cut the light. The blackness that hit us was absolute, a physical, crushing void. I felt my sense of balance tilt. I could hear my own heart, a frantic drum in my ears. I could hear Sam's hitched, shallow breathing. And then, in that total, disorienting darkness, the tapping came again. It was so close it felt like it was just around the next bend. Tap, tap, tap. The sound was sharp, clear, each tap followed by a faint metallic ringing that hung in the cold air. My blood felt like ice water in my veins. This was not a rescue operation. This was something deliberate, patient. My hand was trembling so badly it took me 2 fumbles to find the switch on my flashlight. The beam stabbed into the darkness. The tunnel ahead was empty. The instant the light appeared, the tapping stopped. What is that? Sam stammered, his voice a ghost of a whisper. It's water, Cody said, but his voice was thin, reedy. It lacked all its earlier conviction. Water dripping on a pipe. The acoustics. It's not water, Cody, I said, my voice low. And why does it stop every time we turn on a light? He had no answer. The fear was no longer a background hum. It was a 4th member of our party. A cold presence breathing in the dark with us. We were not alone. The mountain hadn't just trapped us. It had trapped us with something. We continued on, huddled so close our shoulders were bumping. Our 3 flashlights now on. Their beams converged into one large, trembling circle of safety. The ensuing silence was worse than the sound. We were all just waiting for it. Every drip from the ceiling, every skitter of a loose pebble under our boots, was an electric shock to the nervous system. We had to stop to change the batteries in my light. As I unscrewed the cap, plunging us into a few seconds of darkness, we heard a new sound. It was a soft, wet, dragging noise. Shish thump, shish thump. It was slow, heavy, labored, like someone dragging a waterlogged sleeping bag over the rough concrete floor. And it was coming from just ahead. I jammed the new batteries in, my fingers clumsy and numb, and flicked the light back on. The sound instantly ceased. "Okay," Cody said, his voice tight as a piano wire. That was not water. His wall of scientific rationalism was crumbling brick by brick, and watching it fall terrified me more than the sounds themselves. When the skeptic gives up, you know you're past the point of no return. We stood back to back, a terrified trinity in an ocean of black, our lights cutting useless arcs into the empty tunnel. "We have to keep going," I said, my voice hoarse. "It's the only direction we haven't been. Maybe it's a bear that got trapped down here. A big one." I knew I was lying to myself. But the lie was better than the truth. No bear stops making noise just because you shine a light on it. We pushed forward, our pace faster, a desperate shuffle. The dragging sound was gone, but its ghost remained. We walked on eggshells, drowning in a silence that was now pregnant with anticipation. Our entire universe had shrunk to the 20-foot circle of our combined lights. And that's when the mimicry began. It was Sam who coughed. A nervous, dry hack that barked loudly in the enclosed space. A few seconds passed. Then, from the darkness far ahead of us, we heard the sound repeated. Hack hack. A perfect copy. Except it wasn't an echo. An echo is instant. This was delayed. A recording. A playback. We all froze in place. "Did you?" Sam started, but his throat closed up. Cody just shook his head slowly, his face a pale, sweaty mask in the glare of our lights. We stood there for a full minute, paralyzed by a new, more horrifying level of fear. This wasn't just a creature. This was intelligence. This was something that was listening. And it was toying with us. I desperately tried to rationalize it. The whispering room. We're getting close to it. The acoustics are creating some kind of delayed reverberation. "No," Cody whispered, and his voice was trembling. "That's not how physics works. Jake, that's not how any of this works." Desperate, I had to test it. I cleared my throat. "Hello?" I called out, my voice thin. My own voice echoed normally, fading into the distance. We waited, our chests tight, our breath held. For a long, long moment, there was only silence. Then, from the darkness ahead, a reply came. It wasn't my voice. It was a dry, sibilant whisper, like the sound of sand being poured onto paper. But it formed the same single word. "Hello." My heart felt like it stopped. It was mocking us. It was learning. The dam of our composure burst. Sam let out a choked, terrified sob and started stumbling backwards. Cody was hyperventilating, his eyes wide and unfocused, darting into the darkness beyond our lights. I felt the primal, animal urge to just turn and run, to sprint blindly back toward the collapse, back toward the solid wall of rock that was somehow less terrifying than the intelligent, unseen thing that was now actively hunting us. "Stick together," I roared, my voice cracking as I grabbed Sam's jacket. "Stay in the light." We huddled into a tight, pathetic knot and began to move forward again. We had no choice. To stay still was to wait for it to come to us. To go back was a dead end. Our only, insane path was forward, hoping an exit existed, and praying we could reach it before it reached us. The psychological warfare intensified. It started mimicking other sounds we'd made. The soft click of Cody's EMF meter being shut off. The crinkle of the MRE wrapper I'd opened an hour before. And then it started to whisper. Not mimicking, but creating. Soft, hissing whispers that danced on the edge of our hearing. Syllables that almost formed words but never quite did. Sounds that were filled with a palpable, ancient malice. My flashlight began to flicker. The second set of batteries was already failing. No, 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 Cody muttered, rocking on his feet. One more set, I said, my voice shaking as I tore into my pack. This is it. After these, we're in the dark for good. As I fumbled with the batteries, plunging us into a few heart-stopping seconds of blackness, we heard the dragging sound again. Shish thump, shish thump. It was close now, right around the next bend. And the whispers were with it. Louder now, a chorus of hateful, sibilant sounds. The fresh batteries caught. The beam blazed back to life. We rounded the corner together. The tunnel opened into a vast, cavernous chamber. It was a perfect dome, at least 100 feet across. The walls smooth and curving up into a darkness our lights couldn't penetrate. This was it, the whispering room. And it was not empty. In the center of the room was a huge, bizarre pile of junk. Old radio consoles with smashed dials, rusted metal lockers, splintered shipping crates, all heaped together into a kind of nest. And sitting right on top of the pile, as if placed there deliberately, was a single, mud-caked combat boot. The dragging sound was gone. The whispering had stopped. The silence that fell was the most threatening sound we had ever heard. Go around, I whispered, my voice a dry crackle. Hug the wall. An exit has to be on the other side. We began to creep along the curved edge of the giant room, our backs brushing against the cold, weeping concrete. Our lights were pinned to the junk pile in the center. The boot hadn't moved. We were about halfway around when Sam stumbled, catching himself with a soft grunt. From the junk pile, a perfect mimicry of the grunt sounded instantly. And then the dragging sound started again. But it wasn't coming from the pile. It was coming from above it. From the absolute darkness where the ceiling should be. Shush thump. Something was coming down. We didn't wait to see it. We ran, a flat-out, blind, panicked sprint along the curving wall. The whispers erupted again, but now they were all around us, seeming to come from the very walls of the dome. They were mimicking our frantic, panting breaths, the slap 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 of our boots on the concrete. It was a symphony composed of our own terror. And then a voice cut through the chaos. Clear as a bell. It was Cody's voice. Jake, my leg, help me. I spun around, my light skittering across the wall. Cody was right behind me, his face a white mask of terror as he ran. He hadn't said a word. The voice had come from the other side of the room, by the tunnel entrance. It was trying to split us up. My light flickered, sputtered, and died. Sam's light died a second later. Then Cody's. We were plunged into a blackness so total it felt like a physical object. A blackness filled only with the sound of the whispers and our own ragged breathing. I felt Sam crash into me from behind and we both went down. I scrambled up, totally disoriented. Cody? Sam? Here. Cody's voice was right beside me. Here. Sam squeaked from a few feet away. A new sound joined the cacophony. A high-pitched, electronic whine. It was Sam's camera. He must have dropped it, and the impact had switched it to night vision mode. A sickly green, grainy light flooded the chamber. And we saw it. It wasn't one thing. It was a tangle. Long, pale, impossibly thin limbs were uncoiling from the darkness of the high ceiling like the legs of some nightmare insect. There was no central body we could see, just a writhing mass of these limbs. At the end of some of them were things that looked horribly, vaguely like human mouths, stretching and contracting as they produced the whispering sounds. One of the limbs was slowly dragging a heavy, waterlogged duffel bag across the top of the junk pile. Shush thump. We didn't scream. The sound was paralyzed in our lungs. It was a sight so fundamentally, biologically wrong that my brain simply refused to compute it. In the chaos, Cody fell backward, his body slamming into the curved wall with a heavy thud. The thud was followed by a grating, scraping sound. A section of the concrete wall had given way. It wasn't a door. It was a narrow, vertical maintenance shaft, black and tight, barely wide enough for a person. Go, I screamed, my voice finally tearing itself free. Go now. Cody didn't hesitate. He scrambled into the opening. I grabbed Sam and shoved him toward it. Get in. Climb. Sam, his body moving on pure, mindless instinct, squeezed into the shaft and began to climb. I turned to follow, but as I did, The ghostly green light from the camera on the floor illuminated one last image that is burned into the back of my eyelids forever. One of the pale limbs had detached from the mass above and was slithering across the floor toward the camera. At its tip, a circular orifice opened and closed. And from it, in a perfect, chilling mimicry of my own terrified voice, it whispered, "Get in, climb." I threw myself into the shaft and clawed my way up into the suffocating dark. Climbing for my life. From the bottom of the shaft, we could hear it. It wasn't following. It was just mimicking the sound of our desperate scrabbling on the concrete, letting us know it was still there, listening. We climbed for what felt like hours, our fingers raw, our lungs on fire. The shaft was tight, claustrophobic, reeking of rust and dead air. Finally, my outstretched hand hit a rusted metal grate. I pushed with the last of my strength. It gave way, and I hauled myself out, gasping, into the cool, clean air of the deep woods at night. Cody was already there, collapsed on a bed of pine needles. Sobbing, I reached back and helped drag Sam out. We had made it. We were miles from where we started, in a part of the forest that was completely unfamiliar. But we were out. We ran until our legs cramped and our lungs burned. And then we collapsed under the cold, indifferent light of the moon. A team of park rangers found us 2 days later, suffering from severe dehydration, exposure, and shock. When we told the sheriff's department our story, they were patient, but dismissive. The official report concluded that we had been trapped by a minor collapse, and that a combination of stress, darkness, and hypoxia had induced a folie à trois, a shared psychotic episode. They showed us geological surveys. A complex like the one we described simply didn't exist in that sector. The team that eventually cleared the rubble at the entrance we used found nothing. Just a utility tunnel that went for 50 yards and ended in a solid rock face. No junction, no side passages, no whispering room. Our crew, our friendship, it all dissolved after that. Cody clings to the official report like a life raft. He has to believe it was a hallucination to stay sane. Sam had a full breakdown. He spent 6 months in a private facility and has never spoken a single word about what happened in that bunker. Not to me, not to his parents, not to his doctors. And me? I'm the one left with the memory, clear and sharp as broken glass. I know what we heard. I know what we saw. The report said we were the only living things in that tunnel. That what we experienced wasn't real. But they never found Sam's camera. It was a top-of-the-line professional model, in a waterproof, shockproof case built like a tank. I know he dropped it on the floor of that chamber. And sometimes, in the dead of night, when the house is too quiet and the world is asleep, I lie awake and I think about that camera. I think about it sitting there on the cold concrete, in the absolute, total darkness, and I wonder, with a fear so deep it steals the air from my lungs, what new sounds it might be recording right now, in that vast, listening silence beneath the mountains.